Hello and welcome to Lend Me a Podcast. I think that's the title I'm going to stick with. It's episode 4. I might as well keep it up. My name is Dwight Stearns and I'm going to be your host this week. And joining me this week is Kelsee Allan. Allan? Yes,
Allan.
That's what I thought. I that's the other thing I haven't done with any of my guests is ask them how to pronounce their names before going in, just to make sure. And I was 100% sure, but I was still second guessing myself as I said it.
It happens.
Hi, Kelsee. How are you doing tonight?
I'm good. How are you, Dwight?
I am excellent. Excellent. I just had a nice conversation with Jim. I changed my hat so it looks like I'm not recording on the same day, but I just let everyone know. And here we go. We're ready for another interview. So, Kelsee, you are currently, Lend Me a Theater is we are a Southern New Hampshire traveling theater company. The whole idea behind Lend Me a Theater is we do not have one. We will come to you. You need to give us your theater. So we are, like I said, traveling theater company. Kelsee, you are currently in LMAT's production of Into The Breeches. And so I'm excited to talk to you about that. But first, I want to hear your story. How did you get started in theater? What is your history? What brings you to New Hampshire? Because I don't believe you're a native. So
I am not.
Curious to hear all of this.
Well, as far as theater goes, I still consider myself relatively new to the theater scene, at least in the context of doing fully realized plays. I've done a lot of stage performance stuff, but didn't really get into actual theater until, oh Lord, I want to say 2018 or so. It was after I moved here. And the first production I was ever in was Three Witches productions of Macbeth at Hatbox. Previously to that, I've done choir my whole life. And my high school that I went to, we used to do this thing called Broadway Showcase, where all of the choirs and all of the bands and orchestras would show pieces from different Broadway musical numbers. So it wasn't like a whole play, but several highlights from different things. And that was at La Mirada Theater in California, which is a huge stage. Like you could fit 100 people easily on that stage. And then I've got like some film, like indie film experience as well, both on screen and helping behind the scenes and stuff. But if that didn't give it away, I am originally from the Los Angeles, California area. So I am a far, far, far way from home.
Yes, clearly. That's
Yes.
Usually you hear about people. I have friends. I went to film school, so I have friends who migrated out that way.
Too.
Very few have come the other way that I have found. So that's a fun one.
Yes. I never cared for California. I never did. It's very expensive. It's very dirty. It's very smoggy. It's very crowded.
The smog is real. You're not wrong. Like there was
is.
a couple of days like where I did an internship out there in like 2009 or 2010 or whatever, and there were some days where you couldn't see, like down the street. It was disgusting.
No. And when you fly in on a plane, you come down through the cloud layer and then you come down through the smog layer. It's just, it wasn't for me. I had my family and like in and out, and that was about it.
Double animal style. That was the way to go.
Anything in and out makes me happy. It's my first stop whenever I go to a state that has in and out. Yeah, I was born and raised in California, and then I left the first time. You wanted my journey, so now you're getting it.
Yes, please.
The first time I left was in 2011. Shortly after I graduated college, I moved to Virginia State with a couple of friends of mine from college that were married. The husband had gotten a job contracting in Afghanistan for 3/4 of the year. So he would be gone for 2 months, home for a month, gone for 2 months, home for a month. They didn't want his wife, Illy, to be alone, basically in a new state with new friends and stuff. So I moved with them. You know, they didn't charge me rent or anything. I was basically there to keep her company. And it was nice for me because I needed to get the heck out of California. I was going crazy. I was there for about 2 years and then moved to Pennsylvania for about 6 months. before my parents convinced me to move back to California for a little while because my grandparents were getting older and, they wanted me to not be 2,500 miles away from them. So I went back and was there for another 2 or 3 years, I think. And it was awful the whole time. Was just a huge reminder of how much I hated that state and how much I didn't want to live there for the rest of my life. Which that misery, this is where things get a little dramatic, sort of caused me to, I married a rebound.
Oh, okay.
Yes, I don't recommend marrying a rebound.
Noted.
Great guy. We still talk, but not the right relationship. I had moved to Mississippi to be with him because that's where he lived with his son. And that marriage did not last very long. So after that, I had to figure out where the heck am I going to go, because I don't have a support system in Mississippi aside from basically him and his friends. And I knew I didn't want to go back to California. So it was kind of a toss-up between Texas and New Hampshire. And I wound up coming up here to New Hampshire. Those were just places I knew people.
Oh, gotcha. Those are two drastically different choices there. So,
and I'm very glad I didn't wind up in Texas either, because I think I would hate my life in Texas right now. But yeah, came up here to New Hampshire, which also happened to be where my now husband, Ian, was from. Well, he's from Massachusetts, but
this is basically the same thing. Yeah, they're close enough.
Exactly. So that's how I wound up here. And I've been here since 2016, I want to say, and I've loved every minute of it.
That's great. Well, we're glad you're here, because now that you're here, you get to be in plays like Into the Breeches.
Yay!
Why don't we talk about that a little bit? So,
sure.
Into the Breeches obviously is the new, or not the new, but it's the show that Lemmy Theater is currently putting up. Full disclosure, I'm in it as well. So why don't you tell me?
I didn't know.
I know, shocking. I've kept it such a secret this entire time. So can you tell me about your character, Grace, a little bit? Who she is, what she's doing, what her journey through, well, you don't have to go super spoilery, but
Oh, yeah.
What her role in the show is.
Luckily, I prepared for that question because I had a feeling you were going to ask about her a little bit. So Grace is an individual, much like many of the women back in the 1940s or so. She's at home while her husband is off at war, and she's having to make do with her life and worrying about her husband, and also having to take care of their kid. And, so there's a lot of obviously real serious things that are going on at the time. But for her, it's also an opportunity, because now that her husband isn't here, she's like, well, nobody's here to stop me from doing some of the things I've always been interested in doing that I've never done, because my husband was never a fan of the idea. So she goes to audition for the Shakespeare play, which is, she's always wanted to do acting. She's very nervous about it, but she's very excited. And it's just kind of, for her, not to get into spoilers, she's just a woman that's figuring things out about herself. And that's part of what you see through the show, is she's struggling to come to terms with a few things, few realizations about who she is, and kind of starts to learn that throughout the play. I don't think she ever fully reaches that aha moment about herself, but several moments of learning to be more comfortable and more confident in who she is.
I think that's kind of how the play is in general, where everyone kind of has these threads that they're all building onto, and very few of them actually get resolved in the end, in that sense. Yes. So I think it's up to the individual actors, or them to portray, kind of, infer where their characters are going. How are you doing that with Grace? Is there a specific way that you're working towards that, or are you just winging it? What's your process? How do you figure her out? What's the most cliche thing I can ask?
I'm definitely a wing it person. I'm going to be totally honest. There's certainly some things that you can infer from text. But a lot of times the way that the text is written and stuff, you'll think it's one thing when you're just reading it in your head or even sitting down and doing a table read. But once you're actually up and on your feet and you start working with the other actors while they're also building their characters and stuff, you have those moments of, well, actually, maybe doing things this way makes a little more sense, or I didn't even think about how it could be interpreted this way. So I tend to wing it. I don't have like any formal theater education or anything like that. I've literally just been winging it since the day I auditioned for Macbeth.
Spoilers, or dude,
Yes.
the secret is out. I'm exactly the same way in the sense of like I have no training or anything like that, and so I'm always in awe, or I'm curious about how other people approach things, because I think I'm very similar to you, where it's like you get an idea of the character, you have an idea, but then like as you are working it and whatnot, someone can say something like early on in a scene, you're like, oh, that's like my motivation for later. And it's like, it's figuring out that puzzle, or like, cause that's what like plays feel like to me, is like, there's like a big puzzle of how your character is moving through it. It's like, that's half the fun. And I know like right now we finally have like a set that we're working with, and that changes everything completely. So but that's awesome. Yeah. How are you finding working with, is this a large cast compared to what you've worked with before, a smaller cast? How is like the ensemble fitting together for you?
I would say it's about on par. Maybe slightly on the smaller side, but not by too much. I haven't really done anything with a super small, intimate cast before. I think the smallest number I had was, I don't know, maybe 6 at the very, very minimal. So this is a cast of what, 8?
I think it's
7?
8 or 9.
Is it?
I don't know.
I don't know. I can't do math.
Yeah, math. It's literally impossible. It's
yes.
impossible. Well, how many of us are there? So there was you. I think it's 8, because there was you in the center, 3 on each side. That's 7 plus Ellsworth.
Yes, I think you're right. I love that we had to go to the setup of the very last scene.
Yep. To figure it out. And I don't think we're missing anyone. I hope not. If we are, I'm very sorry.
Oh, that's funny.
So that's awesome.
Yeah, so it's about comparable to most stuff.
So you've been doing shows for 6 years now, I suppose. Has the way you approached a show ever changed? Like, have you ever like altered the way that you approach a character, or has that remained consistent? Like, how much have you learned and picked up from other productions?
I've picked up a lot. I don't get me wrong, I'm still winging it, but I've become a lot better at winging it over the last few years. I'd say the main difference is probably my confidence has gone up. When I auditioned for Macbeth, that was a very not anxious time, but I'd never done anything like that before. And my confidence in myself with live performance and stuff wasn't super high. I know that I can perform, but I auditioned for so many things through high school and college and never got picked for anything. So, that was always kind of riding around in there. And it was hard because I love performing. It's something I've always loved to do. So to never get picked for things that weren't like you're automatically included just because you're part of the women's choir or something like that was hard. But that's kind of where Ian, my husband, came into play, because he is formally educated in theater. That was what he went to college for. He's done plenty of acting himself, both on stage and in film. So he encouraged me to keep trying, and, got in with Macbeth, and the rest was, from there, I built up a lot more confidence. Awesome. Basically.
So you're kind of like the opposite of Grace, where you actually have a support system and people who are helping you go forward. That's awesome. I was actually going to ask if there was like a parallel there, and there's kind of like, I don't know, an opposite, I suppose. So.
I never lack for confidence most of the time. I think you're aware of that at this point.
Yes. I have picked up on that once or twice. I think this is the second show we've done together, and I've never. Yeah. We were in Government Inspector, correct? Yeah.
Yes, and I don't think we've been in anything else together. So
I'm pretty slow in terms of acting. I only do like 1 or 2 things a year. And then I had a kid last year and that threw a bunch of wrenches.
Yep, that'll throw a lot of wrenches.
I guess we technically, I mean, we weren't in the same production, but you did end up in the 7-day plays, not by, like, that was crazy random happenstance. So.
Yeah, that was not how anyone expected that to go down, but here we are.
I really do hope they end up putting that back up again, because I was all ready for it to go up.
I would love to.
And that was a lot of fun.
I had originally been approached a while back, I think, for being one of the writers for 7-day plays. And I wound up having to decline because I was cast in She Kills Monsters. And that was going on around the same time where we were rehearsing. I just wasn't going to have the dedication. I think the day that I would need to be writing the play was one of the performance days for She Kills Monsters. So I had to decline that. But then someone got sick in the show that Ian was supposed to be performing in for 7-day plays. And I kind of had to, I was the last resort option. And luckily I could have the script in front of me because I had 2 days to rehearse.
Yeah, but you knocked that out of the park. That was like crazy impressive that you were able to come in and do that. So writing, have you ever written anything before? And is that something that you want to do, or?
I have written so much, not plays necessarily. I mean, I've teetered around with some plays, and I have a few bouncing around in the noggin at any given time. Free time is not always a commodity I get to enjoy. But I have written millions upon millions of words. That's actually my main hobby, is creative writing. That's something that Ian and I do together. That's actually how we met, was online doing, I don't know if you know what forum role play is.
Yeah, I used to be a part what was it called? Anime Zone, Anime Net. In high school, I used to do things like that. Very, very, like, it was very sporadic. But yes, I'm aware of that. We used to do tournaments. It was like writing tournaments where you'd like fight each other. Yeah, that was fun stuff.
I've participated in those. I've hosted those. I've won those.
Cool.
I've been doing that basically since toward the end of college. The same couple that I moved to Virginia with, the wife was the one who got me into that, starting on a Star Wars site. And then I, bounced around for a little while. I mean, those communities kind of shift and ebb as people have to deal with their lives and stuff. But eventually I came to a Dragon Ball Z forum, which is where I met Ian. And the rest was history from there.
Awesome. So were you already living in New Hampshire at that point, or was that?
No, I was in California. I was actually dating my ex-husband at the time. So obviously we were friends for a while first. And then eventually I was like, why am I not with him?
Yeah, that kind of makes sense. So speaking of Dragon Ball, that was actually one of my questions that I'm so obvious. It's not even funny. I am learning so much about my castmates, where it's like we have a lot in common, more than I thought. I am also a massive Dragon Ball fan. Started on Toonami back in the late 90s. I can still think of the intro thing with like where Krillin's like, "Oh, Namek," when you call the dragon. Like that is just burned into my brain. Dragon Ball. Obviously, we're still mourning the passing of Akira Toriyama. He was majorly influential, legendary author. What is it about Dragon Ball that is attractive to you? And like, I know I'm who's your favorite character? And what's your favorite arc? Things like that. That's what we call a softball or a lob or whatever.
No, because he already knows the answer, people. I'm very obvious about my answer. Of course, it's the Prince of All Saiyans, Vegeta. It's certainly not that clown Kakarot.
Whoa, we're throwing shade early. Fair enough.
I've even got, I think you've seen hopefully you can kind of see it a little bit here. My tattoo, that's part Zelda, and then the top of it is the Saiyan royal crest. I feel really smug about that one because you said I'm the only person who's ever identified that. You are the only person who has ever correctly guessed both references in that tattoo, and it fills me with joy.
It was one of those things, like you were sitting in front of me and I looked over and I was like, there's no way that's it. And so like I'll be honest, I was like I'm just making sure, I'm double checking. I like looked it up beforehand. I just was like Saiyan Crest. That's it. So I was like, is that this? And I was, because it's such a, I feel like the Saiyan Crest specifically is super obscure because it's only really in like Super, and I think it's only in like the Broly movie. I might be wrong on that.
Basically, the only times you ever see it is a lot of like flashbacks or people that have been introduced from things that take place pre-Dragon Ball. Yeah, you only see it a handful of times. So it's one of those things that unless you're like really into Dragon Ball Z and probably really into Vegeta specifically, then you're not going to know what it is. Yeah. So I was very excited. That made my day.
Well, now the question is which Vegeta, because there's the planet, there's the king, and then there's the Vegeta. Like they're pretty boring.
My son, the planet, or me?
Good stuff. Yeah, no, it's Super is like, it's one of those things where I know it's like one of the, or Dragon Ball in general, it's one of those, like, it's just a really popular thing, but it's like very, I don't want to say rare that you ever see someone like out in the wild with like that, but it's just always like fun when you get to connect over that. Do you have a favorite arc or?
Oh my God. It's hard to choose, especially when you're like breaking things up into the various series. I will say I grew up almost entirely on Dragon Ball Z. I didn't start with Dragon Ball. So that, I mean, I have seen all of Dragon Ball, but that was more in my adult years when I kind of returned to it. Started with Dragon Ball Z, and my favorite arc from Dragon Ball Z is basically the entire Android saga, specifically with Cell. Cell's my favorite antagonist from the Z saga. I sort of watched a few episodes of GT. I haven't actually fully finished that. I know people are controversial about GT. I think that they're worth a watch. They've got, their things that it's weird, but it's anime. It's anime from the 90s. Everything's going to be a little weird around that time. For me, I just enjoy the world and the setting, and it is what it is. I'm happy to watch subpar anime. For Super's tough because the Tournament of Power, it was so glorious. And it's one of the only, I really didn't watch a lot of anime basically until I started dating Ian. And the Tournament of Power was just so crazy that he and I were literally on the edges of our seats screaming at the monitor, during the whole last fight and everything. But I think I have a special place in my heart for the Zamasu arc, and I think that's probably my favorite from the Super series.
That's awesome. Yeah, when they reintroduced Vegito in that, is just like such a hype moment. Oh, it's amazing. And I mean, it is easy to say that the Tournament of Power is, but that's also like 50% of the show, isn't it? Like a super big chunk of it. It's like the last like 75 episodes or something like that. So but oh man, it was so good. And I know we had briefly talked about this, I think, before, but you said Ian's kept up with it past kept up with the manga past Super.
Yes, Ian does read the manga. I never really got into reading mangas, so he'll update me on like interesting things that happen. But I don't take the time to read it myself.
Well, congratulations, Vegeta finally beat Goku in the last one in an honest to goodness fight. So
that happened in Superhero, the movie.
Yeah, and exactly. Yeah,
frankly, this is where you're gonna know that I'm like such a Vegeta simp. Vegeta has never been beaten by Goku.
Oh yeah, that's one of those, like, if you want to get technical, because like Yajirobe and Krillin.
Yajirobe was the one that took his tail away, and then at the very end of the fight during the Saiyan saga, Goku was down for the count. He couldn't even stand up. He was done. Vegeta was still moving. It was Krillin and Gohan.
It took Gohan falling onto him.
Yes. So, has he ever beaten Goku? I technically consider that a beating. I get that you can say that he hasn't, but he's never been beaten by Goku either.
Yeah.
So
Except for that one. Well, no, it wasn't even a one time, but it was when Goku held back on Super Saiyan 3 in the Buu saga, and Vegeta got
pulled a
so
cheap
pissed.
shot. Yeah, I know. That's okay.
Good stuff. It's fine.
It still counts.
Yep, exactly. All that matters is the W at the end, right? That's all that
Yes.
all that it is. So speaking of things like the Tournament of Power and crazy moves, and you guys on the edge of your seat, I know also that you are a large wrestling fan. So I'm curious as to what's the best way to host a WrestleMania party, a viewing party for that? What is like your ideal one of that, and how do you guys do it?
Well, we've never actually hosted a watch party. I would love to at some point.
I thought you had like Greg over or something like that. Or
maybe basically that's what it is. We had Greg over, but these days it's kind of hard to find people that are willing to admit that they still watch wrestling, because that was, a big thing in the 90s. I mean, it was a big thing before then too, but it was really starting to hit its peak during the 90s as you're shifting into the Attitude Era. And these days it's one of those things where most people, you bring it up and the common person is like, people still watch that? That's still a thing that people do? And I'm like, yes.
It's arguably bigger than ever right now, isn't it?
It's huge. They've had, I don't remember what the attendance was at the most recent WrestleMania a couple weeks ago, but it was like 72,000 a night or something like that. And WrestleMania is 2 nights now these days. So yeah, they sell out pretty much every performance now, even during Monday Night Raws and Friday Night SmackDowns and stuff. They're almost always sold out for seats. Yeah.
So
I don't remember the question.
It was what's your ideal viewing party for
yes,
I'm trying to be like Hot Ones. Have you ever watched Hot Ones? I'm trying to have like a fun and interesting like, what's your Mount Rushmore of wrestlers? So, I don't know,
we should have done a Hot Ones. They sell the kits anyway.
They do, yes.
I mean, for me, it's just about coming together with people that enjoy wrestling or enjoy really even fighting stuff, because I used to go to like MMA watch parties and stuff too. I didn't really keep track of MMA, but I enjoyed going to those. But just about having the right people that enjoy it, that, know the storylines, that always makes it fun, because then you can sit and analyze like, oh, I think this is going to happen or that. Or just someone who's willing to give it a shot. And as always, with any gathering, good food and an internet connection that's stable.
That's key, right? Yeah, that's
it's so key. We actually we watched when Elimination Chamber earlier this year was going up. It was the weekend that Ian and I were in Canada with Greg, because we were supposed to be seeing Rosencrantz and Guildenstern Are Dead
I heard about that.
With Billy Boyd and Dominic Monaghan, and unfortunately it got canceled because of the weather. So we drove, 10 hours to Halifax and spent 2 nights at a hotel just for the sake of spending 2 nights in a hotel, basically. But we had Elimination Chamber that weekend, and it was in Perth, Australia. So it was like 5 a.m. And we didn't even think about the fact that we're in a different country. So our streaming apps aren't going to work. So we had to go through a whole process of figuring out like a VPN on our phones. And
hotel Wi-Fi is not exactly the best thing to try anything on. So
it was a process. We managed to watch it. And then we went back to sleep for like 3 hours and woke up to find out that the show we came out to Canada for was canceled.
Oh, boo.
And Greg had just driven up that night. Like he arrived at like 12:30 in the morning to get up to watch Elimination Chamber at 5, then to just have to turn around and drive back home to New Hampshire.
Oh, that's just heartbreaking, especially like with that cast. Like that would have been just like a once in a lifetime amazing thing. So gross.
Yeah.
That absolutely stinks. So going back to what you had mentioned earlier, you were talking about indie films and stuff like that. I'm curious on that. What were the when you had done stuff like that out in LA, what was the process for that? Were there any that you were in that you're proud of? Like, how did that go?
I'm being involved in all of them. I'll say it was primarily with one director who is a high school friend of mine. We've actually known each other since elementary school, but we didn't really start becoming friends until high school. And he studied film, and like that's what he does. He does film related things. And he always used to have me help him with a lot of behind the scenes stuff. I would usually do like costuming for him and just helping with various, I'm going to say stage manager, even though that's not, there's no like technical stage or whatever. But he would also have me act in things with him from time to time, just when he needed like school projects and that kind of thing, and needed someone that he knew he could just pull in real quick to help with things. And ironically enough, I'd say in like 95% of the stuff that I've done for him filming wise, I was almost always pulled in last minute, and it was almost always so he could kill me. Like I die in like 95% of his productions that I've been a part of, and it's kind of a running gag at this point.
And they're not even horror movies. It's just he was looking for an excuse.
No, pretty much, yeah. But the biggest thing that he did was, if you ever get the chance to look it up on YouTube, he was doing a live action Teen Titans thing.
Oh, cool.
It's called the Teen Titans Project. I believe he has it under the name Lamar Perry, I believe is what the YouTube handle is. And I actually played Donna Troy in that. And this was another instance where it was supposed to be a different actress, and then she either bailed or just didn't show up or something. So he threw me in there. And for that first episode, you can't really see my face too much, mostly because he was still hoping to have that other actress in. So it was a lot of like just from here down or whatever, so he could hopefully mask that. And then she just never showed back up. So he basically has the one full episode, and then he's got two smaller episodes that he had to film because he kept losing the act. I mean, when you're doing indie projects of your own stuff, people can't really commit to that. So he hit a few road bumps. I don't know that he's done a whole lot more with it lately, but I'm in a couple of them. And that was just so much fun to be a part of that process, because I did the costuming for that too. I did the costumes for Batman and Superman. And I love helping him with any of his stuff that he needs, which is pretty much one of my only other complaints about being as far away as I am now, is I'm not there to help him with his projects anymore. So
have you done anything locally, or is it was all just
not film? Well, I guess I should say not acting film wise. I have helped. I was the script supervisor for Donald Tung's production of Home Burial. That I don't know if you've seen any of his stuff on running around on Facebook.
I have. It's done some festivals recently, correct? Or?
Yes, it's actually already won a few awards for best short, I think.
As well, or I think he won cinematography as well for some. Maybe
yeah, he's won a few. It's doing pretty well, and it's still going through several other festivals. It's kind of an ongoing thing. He submitted it to several festivals, but I did script supervision for him for that, and then helped with whatever various background stuff that he needed.
That's awesome. Yeah, it's based off the Robert Frost poem, correct?
Yes.
So when you were saying earlier as well that you used to do chorus and stuff like that, so what was that experience? What was your favorite Broadway song to sing? How did?
My God, how do you pick?
Fair enough.
And again, like I said earlier, I was pretty much only involved in the group project, like women's choir, mixed chorus kind of stuff. I auditioned for several like solos and things like that, and never got any of those kind of things. But I did, let's see, I did that for 4 years. So I have to kind of filter,
to go all the way back.
remember all the stuff I did. I know we did One Short Day from Wicked. And that was the mixed course, so men and women in that. And that was a lot of fun because basically we were trying to recreate the town of Oz. So you've got, the girls that were playing Glinda and Elphaba. But outside of that, the rest of us were all just townsfolk. And we were given the opportunity. We could be whoever we wanted to be, whatever kind of persona. We could wear whatever we want as long as it was all green. And just, behave like our characters in the background on stage while the other people are singing. And I did a evangelistic hobo.
Okay. That's a distinct choice. I don't remember that.
I went to private Christian school. But yeah, I was basically dressed in a bunch of green rags. I had like dirt makeup all over me, and I was running around like a clinically crazy person with a Bible with a green cover, like shoving it in people's faces as I'm walking around and like, trying to be all evangelical. It was a lot of fun.
That's too funny. Awesome.
Yes.
I've never really been involved with musicals that much. I did one, did Music Man with WAG. This is like 10 years ago at this point, longer. Oh my God. Time is endless and goes by too fast. So circling back to some other things here, what is the story behind the Best Laugh Award?
I should have known this was going to come.
Absolutely.
The award, unfortunately, is in the other room. It's not one of the ones that I have framed in here, but so I have I'm very notorious for, if I find something funny, I'm going to laugh. I'm going to laugh about it as loud as I want. And I don't particularly care if nobody else thinks the same thing is funny that I thought was funny. If I'm the only person laughing in a room, I am still cackling like a hyena at like full bellow, and I'm not really ashamed of that. So I guess over the years, being involved in theater and seeing a lot of shows and stuff since I moved to New Hampshire, I have built a reputation as one of those people that, when I check in with my tickets and stuff, somebody from the crew runs to the back of the cast and is like, "Oh, Kelsee's here." And everyone's like, "Yes, we're going to have someone good and responsive in the audience."
I have been in those types of things where it's like, "Oh, we got a ringer out there tonight. This is going to be a good one."
Yeah, I just, I find funny what I find funny. And if somebody else doesn't find it funny, well, then they need to loosen up.
Yeah,
but I guess I don't know.
But you ended up winning the Best Laugh Award at the Hat Box.
Yes. Yeah, that was when we had the Hats Off Awards. There were actually three people that received that one. I don't remember the name of the guy that got it. It wasn't someone I'd ever met before. But it was very funny because I was sitting next to Ian and our friend Alex Picard, who is aware of my laugh and my reputation. I have attended several of her own shows. So as soon as the name of that award popped up on the screen, she immediately turned to look at me while I'm sitting there going, "Dang it." And she starts laughing at me. And then Greg turns around and is just like, "I don't know why you're laughing. There's more than one person receiving this, Alex." And then Alex had her moment of, "Dang it."
Hoisted on my own card.
Yes.
That's a good one. Oh, fun.
Yeah, it was a fun night.
Yeah, I wasn't able to make that, unfortunately. I wish I was there. That's one of my regrets, actually, about the whole wrapping up of Hat Boxes. I wasn't able to make that.
Yeah.
But
that's all right.
So one other thing I'm aware about you. I tried to do research here. I think
fun.
I think you have said, this isn't that. I think you have said that you are a fan of the character of Deadpool. So how on a scale of 1 to oh my God, where are you for Deadpool plus Wolverine?
Oh my God.
There we go. Yeah. Have you been?
The thing is, I'm really not into like X-Men or anything. I didn't watch really any of those movies. I wasn't into superhero movies until the MCU started building up. But I love Deadpool, and I've always loved Deadpool because he's, can I say jackass? He's a jackass.
Hell yeah.
You know,
keep it. I guess PG-13 is for, so don't be Deadpool,
Yeah.
and I think we'll be all set.
Yes. Sorry, I cut you off while you were about to ask something else, I think.
I don't remember. Just so like, that's actually interesting. So for the MCU, have you been following it like as the beginning, or has that been something that you've been interested in? Or?
I didn't pick it up until I think Iron Man 2.
Arguably
I know
like the worst movie in the thing.
I loved all 3 Iron Man movies, so
that's fair.
Even the third one, people were like about the third one. I'm like, it's good, but again, I didn't read comics. I wasn't really into superhero stuff in general, so I didn't have that background of like comparing it versus things that happened in the comics and the way that characters were portrayed in the comics and stuff. So that's probably why I'm a lot more tolerant towards a lot of the things that have happened in the MCU than other people.
Yeah, that's something I found is that like I've tried to actively divorce myself from, is because like, especially with the way the MCU ended up going, where like everything was so drastically different. Like the whole Infinity War is completely different from the comics, but it's still an amazing story that they managed. Like what they were able to accomplish in the 10 years, or I think it was 10, 11, like building up a shared universe over that amount of time to be able to do that is fantastic and just unprecedented. So I tried to divorce myself from that attitude, and like I don't know, I've really gone through that whole like, I'm not gonna say toxic fandom, but just like everyone I think kind of goes through that like ebb and flow of like, as you're really getting into something and like you know enough about it to get mad about certain things. And it's like, where's the fun in that? Like what's the point of like being upset about something that's designed to make you joy?
That's the point that I reached with Star Wars, because I love Star Wars. Star Wars is one of my favorite franchises. And for a long time, I had pretty much written it off because I hated The Force Awakens so much.
Really? That's not the one you usually hear that spins people.
Everyone hates The Last Jedi, and The Last Jedi was the only movie in the trilogy that I liked.
Last Jedi was my favorite out of the 3. The only one I actively hated was Rise of Skywalker. It just felt... it was just gross.
The thing with Rise of Skywalker is we had the beginning of it spoiled for us before we watched it, and I think that helped curb our disappointment when we went into it, because we knew what to expect.
Fair enough. Yeah.
It was not a great movie. It was objectively, in my opinion, the worst one in the series, because, say what you want about The Last Jedi. The Last Jedi didn't start off with somehow the Emperor returned.
That's literally a line in the movie. Like Poe says, like somehow Palpatine's back, and it's like, oh, okay. Right. Who needs a villain? Like, anyways.
Yep. And I get it. J.J. Abrams wasn't supposed to be originally running that one, and I'm sure he did the best he could with what was dumped in his lap. But I hated The Force Awakens. It felt very while you're watching it, it feels very much like watching the original trilogy as far as the cinematography and everything else. But there were just so many things storyline wise that I was sitting there like, this is A New Hope, and
it's a remake of A New Hope. Like that's really what it is. Yeah.
And then you've got this one faction that is against the Empire, but then you've got this other faction that is also against the Empire, but is not allied with this first faction. And it's like where the politics were just all over the place and didn't make any sense to me. And Kylo, this was my first exposure to Adam Driver. I had never seen Adam Driver in anything, so I knew nothing about him. And this is one of those moments where when I say I will laugh at something that I think is funny, even if nobody else thinks it's funny.
Is it when he takes his helmet off?
He takes his helmet off, and all I see is this Maybelline hair and these big pouty lips, and it's this tense moment. This theater, a packed theater, because this was opening weekend, totally packed. dead silent except for me cackling like a hyena because I could not take Kylo seriously.
That's fair. That's fair.
Yeah. But, I got tired of, I don't want to go so far as to say that I was ever a toxic fan. Maybe I was for a bit, but I got tired of hating the franchise. I missed loving Star Wars. And luckily, Rogue One got released at some point, and I got convinced to go watch that. And it was a fantastic movie. And that kind of reinvigorated my love for it. And ever since then, I've just been like, you know what? I'm just happy to have new content. I don't care if it's perfect. I don't care if it meets all the checkpoints. I'll have my criticisms from time to time, but I just want more content. And I just want them to keep churning out more content. And I want my Yuuzhan Vong, and I'm never going to get it because nobody has the balls to do Yuuzhan Vong. And that makes me sad.
I feel like a fake fan now. Yuuzhan Vong. Why am I unfamiliar with that?
Most people hated the Yuuzhan Vong. They're basically creatures that were not like immune to the Force, but like they didn't exist within the Force. Like they were just a void within the Force.
Is it Watto?
No, we've never seen Yuuzhan Vong in any.
Oh, okay.
It's only in the books, and there's a long kind of grandstanding theory that the reason the Emperor Palpatine was working so hard to bring the kingdom, the universes, whatever, under his rule, obviously is because he was power hungry and blah, 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 blah. But part of it was that he knew the Yuuzhan Vong were coming and that the only way to protect themselves was if they were all united.
Oh.
And that sounds more altruistic than Emperor Palpatine actually is, but somebody put out a theory kind of detailing different things that happened in the books and in some of the movies that give a lot of evidence to that being a very real possibility. So I would love for someone to do that. I would love for Filoni or Favreau or someone to bring them in somewhere. I would lose my mind, but they probably won't, because most people that read the Yuuzhan Vong books and stuff absolutely hated them. They thought the whole concept was stupid.
I would also feel like, and I consider myself a pretty big Star Wars fan, and I still read the books, so I've never heard of them. So that feels like a hurdle to get to like general audiences. I feel like it would have to be in like one of like the animated shows or something like that. Like even that, I'm sure
possibly. Yeah, they're very interesting. Even if you just do like a quick wiki on them at some point and get an overview, I'm sure you'll probably sit in there like, ooh.
I'm sure the Wikipedia will keep me occupied later tonight. That's awesome. So if you liked Rogue One, you must have loved Andor.
Andor's the only one I haven't watched yet.
Oh,
I know.
Okay.
I'm so mad, but we haven't had any time, and we have so many shows on our list that we started and never finished because we rarely have free time, and I can't like watch it without Ian, and
that
we know
so
that
hard.
it's we know it's objectively, or what people have said, that it's like the best live action series that's been released, and we really want to see it, but it's the singular show that we haven't watched.
It was something where it's like, I liked Rogue One just fine, but I was like a TV show about Cassian Andor, arguably one of the more forgettable characters from this movie, that like I honestly didn't even like him, because like the first thing he does is kill someone in an alley, and I'm like, my hero, murdering people in cold blood. Oh, I love him. But the show, I was like, oh, I am in. Like it does such a good job of making you understand why somebody would like join the rebellion. And like it does, like in those, I think it's 9 episodes, like those nine episodes do more to flesh out the world of Star Wars than most of the movies. It is phenomenal.
It's always nice to have those shows that aren't, this universe has so much more to it than just Jedi and Sith, than just Force related things. So it's nice to be getting a lot of those shows that are focusing on Mandalorian characters and characters from the Rebellion and the Underworld, and I am really psyched about the Acolyte though. That one is
that looks good.
That looks so good.
It looks really, really good. Carrie-Anne Moss looks amazing in that when she was in the trailer. Oh, I can't wait. That's going to be awesome too. I didn't watch Ahsoka, which is like I believe it. I never got like I watched a little bit of the original Clone Wars, not the original, the not the why can't I think of the name of the animator who does Samurai Jack and
I know which one you're talking about. Yeah, the 2D animation one as opposed to the 3D animation one.
But the 3D one, I only watched a little bit of it and I never like super got into it. But like I know the character, but I never really like got invested in it. That's what I've heard. I've heard it's amazing.
The first season, it takes a little bit to pick up because they're establishing everyone. But once it gets going, it does not stop. And it goes right into Order 66. So you will get a lot of stuff from that. And then it also sets up a lot of what you need to know for the Bad Batch, which I don't know if
I'm aware of it. I've heard it because it's a clone trooper.
It's Clone Troop 99, right? Which is the defective clone troopers that are basically like special operatives of clones. They've got like really, really good skills that kind of elevate them above a regular clone.
So how does that work? So if they're all clones, are they all voiced by the same person?
Yes, Bradley D. Baker does the voice of every single clone character in both the Clone Wars and Bad Batch. And you would not know that by listening to it because he has really made individual personas for each of these characters.
That's impressive. Like to be able to do that with that, like I know is like it's all the same person. They're all the same. D. Bradley Baker was he Momo in
I believe he
Avatar?
was.
Yeah, he's
done a lot of stuff.
That's what I know him for, is for making little like funny noises with his mouth.
It's usually either him or Alan Tudyk. So it's gonna be one of those
Yeah, he was the rooster, right? In Moana.
He was Hey the rooster. He was also oh Lord, Weaselton, I think was his name in
the candy one, right?
In Frozen.
That's it.
Oh, and he was that guy in Wreck-It Ralph.
That's it. Yep.
Yes, and he was also one of the robots in was it Rogue One? I think that he was the robot in.
Was it K2SO? Was that the name of the? No.
Oh Lord. I don't remember. He was the big sassy robot.
Yes.
In one, yeah.
I know things. Awesome. Cool. Well, this has I don't know. Is there anything else you want to talk about? I think we
Dwight, I could sit here and talk to you for the rest of the night. So it's more about, are you ready to shut me up?
No, we're good. We can go for a little bit long. Well, okay. So here's a question that I asked to Jim, and I need to come up with a better way to pose it. But and it might have already been answered tonight. So there was like this meme going around like a couple months ago that was people going up to their significant others and asking them, how often do you think about the Roman Empire? And there was like a lot of like every day, blah blah blah. And I was watching the Chucky TV show the other day, and I was explaining to my wife the convoluted history of Charles Lee Ray, the killer doll, who has been around since the late 80s. And I'm watching the show and I was like, this is my Roman Empire. Something that I can just talk about and go to town. What is your Roman Empire?
Oh God, I think I have too many of those is the problem, because the things that I like, I'm unremorsefully passionate about all of them, and I'm one of those people that if I like something, I'm gonna sit and research and learn as much as I can about it. So Star Wars is probably a big one that I haven't read like all of the books or anything, but I'm aware of a lot of the lore and a lot of the universe just because that first RP site that I was on was Star Wars based, so I had to do a ton of research in different things to make my character more fitting into the setting. But I would say obviously things like Dragon Ball Z and Zelda, I can go on for hours and hours and hours. BioWare games, especially Mass Effect and Dragon Age. I will go on and on and on.
Isn't there a new Dragon Age coming out allegedly? Or
Dreadwolf? Yes, it's supposed to be coming out later this year, and I am vibrating out of my seat with excitement. I've been waiting for so long. Oh Lord, what else? And then I've got some of my. I like Doctor Who. I've got some Doctor Who things back here.
Are those maps that you've drawn, or that you've?
Not that I drew. I actually went to a Renaissance fair, and there was somebody selling these.
Oh, Faerun. Okay, I see Faerun there.
Yeah, so here's Faerun. D&D is another thing that I can go on and on and on about. There's a Doctor Who, Captain Jack, really. So this is Gallifrey, map of Gallifrey. Up here, my favorite book series is, or my favorite author is Tamara Pierce. And she does a lot of like medieval fantasy, young adult kind of stuff. So it's got like knights and magic and all these kind of things. So that's Portal, which is her universe there. And then this one's Zelda. I don't even know
I see. Yeah, that's Link to the Past, right?
I actually don't know that it was based off of any one particular, because the maps change with each game.
Yeah.
You know,
it almost looks like, and I might be getting too in the weeds here. The center is the very center. Is it a pyramid?
This?
Yes.
That's Hyrule Castle, and then up here is the Tower of Hera.
Gotcha.
So it might be like Link to the Past.
It looked like the Dark World pyramid in A Link to the Past. That might be what I was thinking, but possibly.
Yeah, or the what's the one with the windfish?
The Game Boy one. A Link. No, not A Link Between Worlds.
Not A Link Between Worlds.
I was literally just playing it today. I do not. I swear. I'd mark that. That was a swear. Link's Adventure. Link's Awakening?
Link's Awakening. That's the one. Link's Awakening. Yes. And then I've got Haley from Firefly and Castiel and Crowley from Supernatural. My Garrus. I love my Garrus. Garrus is my BioWare. I romance him like every time kind of character.
How often do you play through Mass Effect? Is it like a common occurrence, or?
It's fairly common, mostly if I'm just looking for something to do that I don't really need to think about to just kind of pass the time. I'm actually in the middle of a replay of it right now. And I was in Mass Effect 3 when my computer started having problems, and it wound up taking like 3 or 4 weeks to get that fixed. So I haven't opened it back up since then. But yeah, I replay a lot of the BioWare games fairly regularly. I enjoy that interactive storytelling that they do.
The BioWare games, I always get like analysis paralysis because like I get to one like a decision tree and I'm like, oh my God, I'm gonna kill someone or something's gonna go wrong here. And the way I play games, and I am not going to say the proper term for what my friend has coined for me, but it is, we'll say I'm a map lover. If there is a map, I have to go to every corner of that map. So in Mass Effect 1, when you land on a planet, and I had to drive all around everything, and I got burnt out because I'm going up the mountains with I forget what the name of the little crawler.
Mako.
Yeah,
and
just recharge. Oh man, it took me forever, and I got burnt out pretty hard on that one.
See, I don't. With the Mako, the first time I played, I didn't even bother getting all the resources because I hated that thing so much. I did in my most recent playthroughs, but that's mostly because I will pull up a map of where all the little tiny points of interest are and just go get them real quick and then go do the objective. For me, the thing that I will sit there for hours and hours and hours and do that everyone else hates is in Mass Effect 2, the planet mining. I can do that all day. Ian hates it. I will happily sit there and make sure I'm covering every inch of that planet and getting all of my resources.
It was definitely much better than the Mako. I absolutely agree with that. So
yes.
that's good. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know if there's nothing new on Mass Effect coming out, right? Like there was Andromeda, and that was like a garbage fire.
Here's the thing about
Someone with
BioWare
opinions,
fans.
I like this. I never played it. I'm going off of internet reactions.
Yes.
And the things that I have seen, and the screenshots that I have seen of facial animations going like this. So
they did have a few bugs. The thing with BioWare and BioWare fans is BioWare set a standard here. So now if they don't meet or exceed that standard every single time, the fans get pissy and they think that it's an awful game or what. BioWare has a ton of toxic fans, and as far as I'm concerned, they can all shove it personally. But I didn't think Andromeda was that bad. It just was setting up a new universe. And it's kind of the same thing with people that are like, oh, the current Marvel movies aren't as good as they are. Well, yeah, we finished a huge arc, and now we have to start building up to the next big thing. It's not something that we're just going to keep hitting this high mark over and over and over again. That's not realistic. Mm-hmm. Same thing with BioWare. It's just they release these great games, and then when one doesn't quite meet what fans have come to expect, then they call it trash, and it's really not. People hated the end of the Mass Effect 3. I thought it was perfectly fine. I thought it was appropriate. I thought it was realistic. I thought it gave you plenty of options. People hated Dragon Age 2 basically just because it took place in one city and you didn't have like this huge map to explore, but it also took place over the course of like 5 years or something like that. So, and as far as I'm concerned, the Dragon Age games specifically have only gotten better with each installment that they've had. Dragon Age 2 was one of the Dragon Age games. But people are going to nitpick, and
yeah, that kind of goes back to what we were talking about earlier in terms of just like enjoying things and like letting yourself get to that. The Mass Effect 3 thing is one of the first times I think I've ever heard of a developer actively like going in and changing something because of that, which I played 1 and 2. I never got to 3. And then when I heard about that backlash, I was like, well, now I don't really want to play it because I want to know
play it.
Should I? I want to know I want to know what the like original. Is there a way to view the original ending outside of like going online and finding it?
The only difference that they made was at the end of the game, there were 3 major options you could take in your final stand against the Reapers. Obviously, since you've never played, I'm not going to like get into spoilers or anything.
Appreciate that.
But basically what a lot of fans were mad about was that you were pigeonholed into one of those 3 options, and there wasn't really an option to do the one thing a lot of them wanted to do, which was just, no, we're just going to keep fighting the Reapers the way that we are and not taking one of these special options. There basically wasn't an option to say, no, I'm not going to do any of these things. And that's what they added, was basically, if you argue with the person that you're talking to at the end enough, then it will lock you into the other option that people wanted.
Thank you for dancing around that. It was the first time I've ever really like seen, and like it really like got me thinking about like authorial intent, and I don't even know if that's the correct term for it, but like author intent, and how like it made me mad that somebody had like a vision for something and they created something, and that like people basically bullied them into changing it. And like that was like the beginning of, I think, a lot of that like entitlement in, I'm sure it's always been there, but like it was one of the first times I remember someone like acquiescing to like that level of pressure.
And another complaint that they had too was, and I can kind of get being upset over this, but BioWare boasted having like a certain number of different endings that you could have. It was like somewhere in the 20s or 30s of different ways that your game could end. It could be unique. So I think people, for whatever reason, were expecting those to be like huge changes and like vastly different. And it's like, well, no, it's your choices leading to, is this NPC going to live or die?
Yeah.
Is this situation going to be handled this way or that way? Like, they're all still minor things. You can't expect them to build a game that has these massive plot differences at the end. They just can't account for that many variables. It's not realistic. So I didn't get why people were upset.
It's also crazy to put that much work into something that you know people aren't even going to see. Like that's something where like I'm playing through Elden Ring again for like the 7th time, and just like I'm still discovering things that I had not seen on my first many playthroughs. So it's just crazy to me when games do things like that, where they have just this like breadth of stuff to do. Breath of the Wild, a perfect example as well, saying the word breath. Like it's just nuts to be like when people do things like that, and like to turn around and complain about like this amazing thing that's you've already gotten is gross to me. I just don't like it.
Yeah. I will say I'm one of those Zelda fans that I didn't really enjoy Breath of the Wild.
And we're done. This has been an awesome interview. Thank you so much. No, it's okay.
Here's my problem. I don't like open world games. I surmise that you do from what you were saying earlier about exploring every inch of every map. But for me, what I find is whenever a developer focuses on an open world game, that's what they're focused on, is just the open world and not the story. And that's what I want. I want a driven, linear story that takes up, 60, 70% of the content. And, I'm happy to run around in a big full world as part of that. But Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom really didn't have that. You have, a handful of dungeons, and then you've got the shrines, which are a lot of fun, but they don't really take the place of going through full temples and solving all these intricate things in a linear line to get to a major boss of some kind. And, the fact that like the memories you can unlock them all out of order. And I liked a lot of the things about Breath of the Wild. I was just kind of hoping that it was a test to something new that they would then integrate with what has been successful for them in the past and the things that drew me to Zelda when I was younger. And they didn't really do that with Tears of the Kingdom either. I haven't actually finished Tears of the Kingdom because I've been so busy. I've gotten almost all the way through it. I've just been running through basically and trying to unlock all of the underground area, which takes forever.
The first time I jumped down there and I was like, oh my God, there's a whole what really captured me with those games was the scale and the size. And like I loved the loop that Tears of the Kingdom created with the like going finding a map, going down to find where that is, that takes you up into the sky, and just that that whole loop was just so satisfying for me. And like I guess I do appreciate like a good story in a game, but like lately what I have been drawn to is games like Elden Ring and Tears of the Kingdom, where it's like very environmental storytelling, or like story like Elden Ring is a perfect example. Like there's this one, like you go into like this chamber, and there's just like this massive skeleton sitting on a throne, and you're like, what happened here? I want to know. And I can understand that being frustrating, like not getting that answer, but I love the idea of, like I said, like just the storytelling through the environment and like that sense of discovery and awe that you feel in control of.
I like that stuff to be peppered into a linear story. Like I certainly agree that stuff's exciting, but when it's that at the sacrifice of a linear story, I lose my interest very quickly. I'm one of the only people I know that hated Skyrim.
I've never actually played Skyrim. So.
I tried twice, I think, and I got a couple hours in each time. Like the start of Skyrim is so much fun, and then it's just kind of like, okay, here you go run around and screw with a bunch of villagers' lives, I guess, and hope that something interesting happens and don't die. And I was like, okay.
All right, sure, yeah. No, that's fair. That's fair. Like I can't really speak to Skyrim because I haven't played it before, but yeah, from what I understand, yeah, it's just like one massive like sandbox, go do whatever you want. At least things like Elden Ring like does have like you sit at a bonfire and there's like a little arrow that says go this way. I'll go that way. No, actually what I do is I say go that way. I'm going that way. And I'm going to explore as much as I can over here. And that's what
I would probably enjoy Elden Ring. I've watched Ian play it. I would be awful at Elden Ring, which is pretty much the only reason I haven't played it. I know that I would suck at it, which frankly, I think would probably make a really funny like Twitch or YouTube series. But,
have you ever done anything like that, like streaming or anything? Or
yeah, I used to stream, not like religiously, but I have a Twitch. It doesn't really have anything on it at the moment because I think after a while they started deleting some of my videos when I wasn't active. But used to stream things like Sea of Thieves or Lethal Company. Trying to think of some of the older things I used to do.
Was this like during pandemic, or because that's when I got into it, was like during the pandemic stuff, and like I found a little community of other people who did it, and that was a lot of fun.
It was pre-pandemic, some of the stuff that I did. But really, when I created a Twitch account, it was more for watching other people than actually doing any streaming myself. And I had a guy that I watched all the time that played Dark Souls, I think the third game. And he and I got along so well, he wound up making me his moderator, his only moderator at some point for his chat. And then he wound up moving back to his home country, and I've never heard from him since.
Oh, whoa.
So I'm like, oh,
that took a dark turn.
Well, I don't think for anything
nefarious
bad. I think there was just some, family things going on, and he had to go back to where one of his parents was or something like that.
Makes sense.
But I had a whole thing with him because for a long time, my online persona was very much, am I a woman? Am I not a woman? Women don't exist on the internet, because I've got the humor of like a 13-year-old dude. So he did not believe for a very, very, very long time that I was a woman. He was convinced that I was a man. Until we got in a Skype call one day and he was like, oh my God.
I hear it. Yeah. Unless you're doing a really convincing impression, then yes, that's so funny.
Yeah, just my humor and everything, I guess.
I think there's something about like where like online, like you picture the other person as like a copy of yourself or something like that. Like that's like your default is like you're seeing like I go on like, you know, like Reddit and stuff like that. And it's just like in my mind, everyone else that I'm reading is like, well, they're also a 37-year-old dude, right? Like that's
right.
So like, and like it's not even occurring to me like when I was 13, I was also going on to forums and writing stupid and it's stuff. That's two. And writing stupid stuff that like I regret, like or would regret or whatever, like things like that. So it's like, you know, these people who are being idiots are not just people like me. They are, you know, young. They can be young and that.
Yes.
So weird and interesting.
Yep.
But anyways, we've strayed from we're in a play together, right?
Yes, we are.
And I had the same issue with Jim. Tickets will go on sale eventually.
Once we figure out where we're having it.
By the time this goes up, there should be tickets available. I sincerely hope. Keep looking at the Lemia Theater Facebook and website and things like that for all that information. It's going to be a great show, and I'm having a lot of fun with it, and I'm really happy to be back on stage with you. We actually get to do, well, we don't really talk that much, do we? No.
We interact a little bit, but most of my interactions are with the other cast.
Yeah.
As in the show.
Yeah, I really stick with Ida and Maggie. Like those are the two that I tend to.
Yeah.
But awesome. So thank you so much for coming on and chatting with me. This was a blast. I always love doing stuff like this. And I knew
it's been a long time since I've been a part of a podcast. I used to do help with one regularly a long, long time ago, and it's been a while.
Well, hopefully. Do you have outside of the show? Do you have anything else in the fire, or anything else that I don't know? You want to promote something, or Jim is starting a podcast. He said soon. So
is he? Ooh, that'll be good. I'm very excited to see what he comes up with.
Same. It's an interesting idea. Not something that I would. It's something I'm going to listen to, and it's on a topic that I know nothing about. So I'm very excited.
Awesome. And acting wise, I don't really have anything else in the chamber. Obviously, everything's kind of in flux right now with Hatbox being what it is and trying to find a new space because that was the theater that I worked out of primarily. So yeah, nothing solid in the chamber after this one.
Well, I'm sure there'll be something for you soon. I feel like you're pretty prolific. I've seen you in a bunch. I know you do a bunch of stuff.
I try to do at least like 1 or 2 a year when I can, but obviously it depends on the productions and what's available for audition and that kind of thing. But nothing to soapbox about. So
yeah, fair enough. Well, now people know you better after listening to this, so maybe they'll want to cast you. I don't know where this is going. Awesome. Thank you so
I am open.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Kelsey, for coming in. This was a blast. So I look forward to seeing you.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome.
It's always fun to just sit and chat with you.
It is. It is. That was fun. All right. And thank you all for listening, and we will see us in the next episode, whenever that is.